Good evening, church family. I hope that every one of you are having a great day. During this time, we're going to take a look at James chapter 4. Before we started the spring break and the quarantine and everything that we're now in, the youth and I were going through the book of James on Wednesday nights. We've gone through James 1 through 3, and we're now on James 4, and we're talking about a section tonight called Warning Against Worldliness. And when you hear that title, I think a lot of times our mind immediately goes to stay away from the things of the world, stay away from the sins and everything like that. And that is very true. But the way James is talking about it here, one of the reasons I think this is such an appropriate passage for what we're going through right now, he's specifically talking about how we react to the same things other people in the world have to deal with. And what I mean by that is every one of us has to deal with traffic. Every one of us deals with traffic very differently. Some of you, sometimes maybe me, myself included, my wife included maybe, don't always deal lovingly or positively with traffic. Some people, you could care less how long it takes you to get somewhere. You're perfectly content driving 5 miles below the speed limit and just taking your time. That's not everybody. But the reality is, it's something we all have to deal with. What James is talking about in this passage is how do we deal with the things everybody has to deal with. You know, we're always going to have people that we butt heads with. We're always going to have different things going on that are common to us. Every one of us has the things that we commonly have to deal with. How do you react to those things? Do you react the way Christ would act? Or do you react the way the world would act? And so in James chapter 4, I'm going to start in verse 1. I'm going to read several verses. What causes quarrels? What causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot contain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. You adulterous people, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you suppose it is to no purpose that the Scripture says, He yearns jealously over the Spirit that he has made to dwell in us? I'm going to pause right there at the end of verse 5 for a moment. You know, James here uses some very strong language, and he uses it to get his point across. I don't think in this passage, for example, that in verse 2, James is actually condemning them, saying, you're a bunch of murderers, in the literal sense of they're killing people. I don't think that because, one, I think his tone would be stronger if they were actually killing people. I don't think there was this string of murders going on in the church that James was having to address. What he's using here is how Jesus uses that word in the Sermon on the Mount. We tend to respond with hate. Jesus said in one of his most famous speeches, for all of you who have hatred in your heart, you have murdered in your heart. And what James here is saying is, you desire and do not have, so you murder. Because we do not maybe we don't get to have our way, maybe we don't get to have what we want. We respond with hate. Hate towards politicians. Hate towards the people, whoever we want to blame for whatever problem that we're facing. Hate towards the guy that cut us off in traffic today. Hate towards the person that we argue with at work all the time. And that hate, as Jesus put it, is murder in our hearts. And so that is what James is responding to here. Another strong bit of language he uses, he says, you adulterous people. Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? I don't think he's actually saying that they're all committing adultery as they're all cheating on their wives or husbands. They're just not loyal. They're just being disloyal. And that comes from, in the Old Testament, consistently, When Israel would disobey God, he would call them adulterers. Or for those of you that are students watching this, that might seem extreme. I don't think any of you would respond well to if you were disobeying your parents, suddenly they started calling you an adulterer. It doesn't always make sense in our context. But what God means with this is he's saying, you have been disloyal in your relationship with me. You have been disloyal in your relationship with God. And that disloyalty comes from the fact that what James is talking about here, when we react in anger, when we react in jealousy, when we react in greed, we are not reflecting the personhood of Jesus Christ. We are not reflecting God well. And so this very strong language is being used here to catch our attention. And what he's saying is simply this: when you don't react, or when you react badly to what is going on in the world, what every single other person has to deal with, what you're doing is you're poorly reflecting the God that you claim to have a relationship with. And that's a very dangerous place to put yourself in. As this chapter continues, I'm going to skip ahead a few verses. I'm going to skip down to verse 8. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be wretched. Yeah, I just want to put this out. It's a little ironic. This verse literally says, cleanse your hands. Maybe literally, more so right now than, but he says that here. Be wretched and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. Do not speak evil against one another, brothers. The one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is only one lawgiver and judge. He is able to save and to destroy. But who are you to judge your neighbor? What he's talking about here, what he's saying with all this conversation of law and judge and who is the lawgiver, who is the judge, is he's simply saying this: when bad things happen, when things happen that we don't always understand, we have to keep in mind it is not the fault of any one person most of the time. It doesn't justify us to get angry at a certain group of people or a certain person. What he's saying here is God is in control of this world. And when we react to things with anger and with strife, and we react poorly, we talk badly about people, we trash people, what it comes out as is we don't actually have trust in God. Because if we actually trusted that God was in control, we wouldn't behave that way. We wouldn't act that way. And so I want you guys to think about and to understand. I know a lot of you are upset this time, students. I know a lot of you are upset. I'm not sure that I know a lot of you that are upset about school not happening, but I know that a lot of you are upset about sports not happening, about prom not happening, about different things that are going on. A lot of those things are still up in the air. We don't know what's going to happen with graduation yet. We don't know for sure what's going to happen with prom yet. I haven't heard solid answers. And it's human nature in a lot of ways for you to be angry or you to lash out at people. But I'm telling you right now, if you want to surprise people a little bit, if you want to show people who God is, be calm in those moments. Be calm. Yes, it is upsetting. Yes, it is not fair. But sometimes life just isn't fair. And as Christians, we have to learn to put our trust and our faith in God over our faith in the world. One of the things that gets discussed, as bad as the virus is, the political news is a lot worse, in my opinion. I've heard so many people blame politicians and blame President Trump and blame everything else for what is going on in our country right now. But the truth is, really and honestly, they just want someone to blame. They want someone to be angry at. What I encourage you to do, what I'm praying for you to do, what I hope that you will do, is instead of responding to this with pouting or with anger or with distrust, just present yourself with a calmness and assurance that God is in control and that He knows what He's doing. I hope that for you. I pray that for you. And church, I hope during this time we can show the rest of the world, our community and all those around us, how we can respond to crisis, how we can respond to things happening that are not fair and are not right, but we can still respond with the love, the character, and the nature of God. That is my prayer for you this week. I hope each and every single one of you have a blessed week. If you have any prayer requests or you need any assistance from us, you know how to contact us. All of our information is on the church website, midwaysbc.org. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.